Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. What we're doing today is something a little bit different. There isn't going to be any facts and figures come up on the screen. It's literally, as the thumbnail and title says, let's talk Pokemon investing. It's almost going to be, I guess, a bit like a podcast style. So, if you're holding your phone up watching it, you almost probably don't need to. You could leave it running in the background on your computer. You could leave it running in the background on your TV. If you like to listen to sort of podcasts while you're driving, I love doing that. Maybe it's something you could just hook up to your Bluetooth in the car and let play while you go for a nice drive. Because it's not going to be a 5 or 10 minute video, this one. It's probably not even going to be a 15-minute video. It's going to be a bit of a longer one, just talking Pokemon investing. Now, I'd love to hear your thoughts below. Basically, I'm going to share some of mine. I want to make, I suppose, one thing clear from the get-go, that of course, like all other videos, it's not, or this isn't financial advice. How you spend your money is completely up to you, and it's completely your responsibility. So I guess what I'm getting at is take it all, or take some of it, or take none of it with a grain of salt. What you do is completely up to you. We aren't going to be choosing sets like, let's jump on Chilling Reign, let's jump on Evo Skies, let's jump on Vintage. It's just literally a discussion about probably where the hobby's been, where it's going, and hopefully it can hopefully it can lead us in some sort of direction on where we should park our money. But I just want to apologise. I'm a bit under the weather at the moment. My voice is half going, so you'll have to forgive what's normally a very annoying Australian accent. It's probably going to be even more annoying at the moment. Now, before we get into the actual Pokemon investing side of things, I just wanted to give you a little bit of background about myself. It'll only be very brief, maybe 2 or 3 minutes, and then we'll jump straight into the Pokemon investing side of it. So my background is, well, predominantly sales-based. When I was 17, 18, when you're 17 years old, you first get your Ps, really wanted to hop into sales, got into door-to-door sales, ended up wasting a uni degree, but got back into the sales industry after that. Been in car sales ever since, been doing that for a long time. Love selling cars, love the interactions that we have with guests, and I'd like to think, I guess it gives me a fair bit of, or hopefully a fair bit of, market knowledge, market trend knowledge, data knowledge. And the other side of it is, the background that I have in Pokemon. Let's go, I suppose, all the way back to the year 2000, because in Australia, there was a little bit of a lag before sort of base set hit stores. And I just wanted to show you, I said there'd be nothing coming up, but I just wanted to show you the first ever holo that I pulled. I still have it. It is a base set holo Zapdos. I would have pulled this back in about the year 2000. Second holo that I ever pulled, it wasn't long after that fossil set also hit stores. Pulled the holo Dragonite. Now, neither of these cards, although they don't look too shabby, are not in good condition. Certainly not worth grading. But, what it shows is, 25 years later, or near on 25 years later, I still have those cards in my possession, in my collection. It's just such a throwback to Pokemon, which is great. Now, I did love the hobby. My friends and I used to play it all the time in primary school. 12, 13, Jim, Neo started coming out, was still collecting it massively, loved it. Probably by about the time that the E-Series come out, like Expedition base set, we were probably 14, 15 years old, and it was a bit uncool to still go to the shop and buy Pokemon cards. So probably like most people, we sort of gave up. Me and my mates gave up on it for a little while there, but I started getting back into it probably when I was, started earning a bit of money in my first job, sort of at 17. I started buying some packs again. By this stage, we're into the EX series. 17, 18, 19, I was back buying EX Power Keepers, EX Crystal Guardians, etc. So kept collecting obviously all throughout the EX series. Got very lucky, pulled myself, I remember, one gold star during that time, which was the Gold Star Celebi, which I was super, super stoked about. And just for the reference, gold stars were not worth much back then. I can tell you that much. I thought, as I sort of opened an eBay store at 19, that it's sort of a big ticket item to put on there. I was trying to buy, sell, and flip a few cards here and there, both Dragon Ball Z, Magic the Gathering, and Pokemon. And I thought gold Celebi would. Shame I didn't keep it, but I thought a gold Celebi would be a good card to put on there. And I think I put it up for auction. I think it went for $65, and it was mint. Like, I'd had it maybe 6 months from a booster into a sleeve, into a hard case, and I think the auction ended at $65. And I thought, well, yeah, not bad, because I was predominantly into Dragon Ball Z, Dragon Ball Z Score back then, and I was buying and selling a heap of collections back then from DBZ. So I thought a little $65 from a gold Celebi wasn't too bad, but in hindsight, it was no good at all. Anyway, moving along, I sort of went a bit quiet during Heart Gold, Soul Silver. Picked it back up during Black and White a bit more. XY I wasn't a huge fan of the artwork during XY. Again, loved Sun and Moon era, particularly the last 4 sets, like the tag team sets. My favourite is, by a long shot, is Unified Minds. I know it's a bit of an outlier because everyone loves Team Up and Unbroken Bonds and Cosmic Eclipse, but my favourite's definitely Unified Minds. I love the old arts inside that, just some belting cards inside that set, and I think it's got huge room for growth. Anyway, and then been really, really into the hobby quite extensively from sort of Sword and Shield onwards up to now Scarlet and Violet. So that's sort of my background in sales and my background with Pokemon. Why this channel and why discuss Pokemon investing? So I wanted to sort of do this channel for 3 reasons. One, because, probably the main one was, like a lot of you end up just sort of coming home from work and, you park yourself on the couch, or you go to the gym and then you park yourself on the couch and you hop on your phone, and it might be 8 o'clock at night. Before you know it, it's 10 o'clock and all you've been doing is scrolling and swiping, maybe watching an episode of Netflix. And, there's this term I heard, which is, creating rather than consuming. So, you just end up consuming someone else's content for 2-3 hours a night, maybe half an hour in the morning, when you've got a little bit of a break at work, and then you add up and you're sort of consuming other people's content for 4 or 5 hours. Meanwhile, I'm asking you to consume my content and watch it, but you get what I'm saying. You end up just consuming other people's content for so long that I thought, I wanted to try something different and create. And sort of that leads me into the next point, which was, hopefully I've got a little bit of knowledge across the years that I can share with you guys. And that also then leads me into the third point when we're talking about sharing, is that, I'd like to one day create, and that's why I love when people comment. I'd like to create, that sort of community. It's a bunch of like-minded people that are sharing the same hobby, which is, it's not easy to find, particularly since COVID, when there's been a lot of lockdowns and probably people lost friends and, we weren't able to go out as much. I know everything's back open now, but, that sort of Pokemon investing and the collecting and the hobby and sharing, thoughts and opinions and trading online, it sort of gave everyone this feeling of community that might have been sort of lacking. So, they're sort of the 3 main reasons. And the fourth one, which is just a small one, also wanted to challenge myself a little bit. Although I've been in sales for a long time, I'm not the most outgoing person. I'd like to think I'm almost a little bit shy and a bit of a nerd, so to speak. So I wanted to try something a little bit challenging, because it's not easy. It's not easy talking in front of people, but it's particularly not easy just talking at a camera. Try just talking at a camera for 5, 10, 15, 20 minutes, like this podcast might end up being. It's not easy. Anyway, that's why. Now, moving on. Pokemon investing. Why has there been a rise in it? Because there has. You can't say there hasn't been. There has been a rise in Pokemon investing. And not only has there been a rise in Pokemon investing, there's also been a rise in alternative investments altogether. So obviously, probably, the last 10, 15 years, we've seen, lots of cryptocurrencies come online. We've seen things lately in the last 5 or so years like NFTs come online. People are looking for sort of alternative investments. Gone are the days where our fathers or our grandfathers invested in stocks, in gold, in bonds. even I suppose things like rare coins and stamps. This is the new generation, so to speak, of alternative investments, and it adds, I suppose, an extra layer and maybe a bit more fun to the whole investing side of things. Because I'm not a big fan of just like, I've got a few shares, but it's boring to me. You click a button on a computer screen and watch money go to your account and purchase into a portion of someone else's company, and then hope it, yields you some dividends and hope it gains in some capital as well. And then, you sell it for more than what you paid for it by just clicking a button. It's it's all a bit boring and not physical. So for me, I think, Pokemon investing, it has that sort of nostalgia and physicality attached to it. You buy them, you get your parcel from eBay, which gives you a little bit of a high, or wherever you bought it from. Doorbell rings, or it's there when you come home from work. You can put it on display, which is cool, and then you can load it. There's apps like the Collector app now where you can load your whole collection into the Collector app. It watches it like the share market, where things go up in value. You can see what's gaining in value, what's decreasing in value over time. You can see your gains percentage-wise. And it's just, I think it's a much more fun form of investing over conventional stocks and shares. The other thing is, I think there's this new wave of, it might be that whole Generation Y thing, but this new wave of, go to college, get a job, invest in stocks, save your money. Like, that sort of form of building wealth feels a little bit old school. People want that alternative investment where they can do something a little bit different. Now, let's start getting right into the crux of it. Like, why are Pokemon cards worth money? Like, how can you use it as an investment vehicle when in reality you could argue there's no commercial value to a Pokemon card. Essentially, it's a shiny bit of cardboard that you cannot use at all for anything. Now, I can remember, and this sort of reminds me of something else, but everything's worth something to someone. And I'll get into the reasons as to why Pokemon cards, both individual and sealed, are worth something. But it sort of reminds me of a story that I watched. I was just watching TV the other night, and this sales show come up, and they were selling pearl jewelry. Now, other than having the occasional nice watch, jewelry does not interest me in any way, shape, or form. But anyway, they were selling these like pearl bracelets, pearl necklaces, and they were asking huge dollars. And the salesman was on there. It was round a lady's neck saying, this is the perfect gift for your wife. If you want to surprise her, if you want to make her day, if you want to make her year, this is the thing to buy, a pearl necklace, $12,000. And I'm just thinking, like, far out. That's worthless to me. Like, absolutely worth. Like, sure, if it's worth $12,000, if someone gave it to me for $2,000 or $1,000, I'd probably buy it. But you get what I'm saying? It's worthless to me. And you could go up to someone else that's a multimillionaire and go, like, here's a first edition base set Charizard holo graded a 10 that they've never seen in their life before because, I don't know, maybe they're 75 years old, and you go, what's this worth? And they'll go, well, I don't know, it's just a piece of cardboard. It's probably worth nothing. So you get my point. Like, at the end of the day, Pokemon cards actually have they're not a resource. You can't use them to build something or do something with. You can't eat them, drink them, consume them. They're really just this sort of tradable commodity almost. And I think there's a few reasons, and I think there's four main ones that I've come up with as to why they actually have value. And the first one is, you can't put a price on happiness. So, if you've always wanted something, for argument's sake, like you've always wanted a first edition base set Blastoise because it was your favourite character from the game, and finally maybe you've got enough disposable income that you can treat yourself that thing. Well, there you go. You're probably going to spend that. Geez, I don't even know what a first edition base set PSA 10 Blastoise is now, probably 20, 30, 40 grand. I'm not even sure, maybe more. I don't really study the first edition base all that much. But my point is, that's you can't put a price on that happiness to bring back something you've always wanted and never been able to get. The second one is, there's always going to be a big hit of nostalgia. And I know that sort of goes hand in hand with the first one about you can't put a price on happiness. But, opening, I remember these Cell Saga, Score, always wanted a booster box, always wanted to pull the Vegeta Revitalize. So I bought myself a case. It cost me about $2,000 US, not even that, sorry, $1,200 US for a case of 6. Sorry, it's 1,200 Australian dollars, so they're $200 Australian dollars a box. Bought a case of 6, first edition, and I pulled the Vegeta Revitalize. Like, I was, you were reliving that childhood, so to speak, back opening packs in 2001 when I was 10, 11 years old. Same goes for Pokemon cards, and that's why, it's one of the reasons why I'm not too worried about, everyone talking about, these stats, like a fifth of all Pokemon cards ever printed were printed in 2022. Now, I don't know if I 100% agree with that stat. Like, base set was printed a lot. And the fact that there's still booster boxes, blister packs around 25 years later, like, you can't tell me it wasn't printed a lot. Yes, okay. 2022 was definitely the year that the most Pokemon cards were ever printed. Was it a fifth of all that's ever been created? I sort of highly doubt it, but I'm not too worried about things ramping up and more production and more cards coming onto the market or more product coming onto the market, because it's also a sign of how popular it is. And, these kids that are buying them these days, or parents that are ripping them with their kids, those kids are eventually going to have disposable income at 21 years old and be more than happy to relive it. Maybe they spent a brief period collecting Lost Origin, Silver Tempest, Crown Zenith, and the first couple of Scarlet Violet cases, and maybe Pokemon 151, and then maybe they turn 13 years old and it's not cool anymore, so they sort of give it up. But then one day when they're 23 years old, they go back and go, geez, like, far out, I'd love to open a box of Silver Tempest and try and pull that Alt Art Lugia. That was just the card I always wanted. So hopefully they'll come back to the hobby, and that's where you get, that's why I'm not worried, because that's where you get the purchases of those boxes. Not only that, you get the guys just cycling through them or cycling them around and repurchasing them as an investment. Just like people buying something like a Cosmic Eclipse box now. The set's, 4 years old, but people are willing to already pay 1,200 Australian dollars to pick up a box right now. Now, I suppose the third point I wanted to chat to you about is there's also a living, like the third point I want to chat, there's also a living in it for people. People can get away from their 9 to 5, they can open up an online store, they can buy, sell, flip, invest in Pokemon cards, the hobby that they've loved. So, for that reason, I think it certainly adds value to it as well. And the fourth sort of thing I was thinking about is, and I think we already touched on this, but it's the new generation stamps, coins. It's the new gen product. And that's where I want to move on to after these four points that I'm talking about, is that, Pokemon is still really young. And I'll get to that in a second, but those sort of 4 points that I was talking about, coupled with the fact that you've got, that many different options these days to sell it. See, back in the day, if you want to sell your prize stamp, it might be at a garage sale or in the local newspaper, whereas now you've got obviously Amazon, eBay, TCG Player, Facebook Marketplace. In Australia, we have a place like Gumtree where you can sell products. So there's that many sort of international vehicles online where you can buy, sell, flip, turn over, profit off Pokemon cards. Now, the other thing I wanted to touch on with Pokemon investing, like I was saying before, is its infancy. It's still, Pokemon in general is still so young. Like, it's been around for it's 26 years. Yeah, 26 years, the trading card game. So it's like, it's still really, really in its infancy. And the collecting side of it is probably even more so, not the collecting side, the investing side is even more so in its infancy. Like, I remember back in probably 2020, I sort of felt like I've been buying, selling trading cards for a long time. And maybe holding them would have helped and I would have made more money if I'd held, but it hasn't really taken off until now. And I remember hopping on Reddit back in 2020 and just searching for Pokemon investing, come across this forum that only had probably 800 members at the time. So I was one of the first 1,000. So thumbs up if anyone's in the Poke investing forum on Reddit. I think, geez, what's it up to now? I haven't looked in a little while. Maybe 30, 40,000 people in that Reddit subreddit now. So it's grown in the space of 3 years. It's just grown absolutely exponentially. And I suppose that's testament to, how young it is, how young Pokemon trading card investing is. And, we can talk on here, we can talk facts, figures, numbers, this amount of growth, that amount of growth. But at the end of the day, no one really knows. It's such a fresh vehicle to try and make money out of. And, it's almost similar to NFTs in the sense that when something's so fresh and so in its infancy, everyone, including myself, tries to start making rules around it as to, look for these things in a set and it'll guarantee to make you money. And the fact is, no one really knows yet. You can invest here in Australia, the ASX 200, and over the last 50 years, it's averaged 7% growth per annum or 6% growth per annum. It's going to be a safe vehicle to get returns. No one really knows on Pokemon cards. And, that boom that we had, is it a flash in the pan? Because in all honesty, prices of especially singles and vintage sealed has come back down to earth a little bit. Is a base set booster box just indefinitely going to climb? Like, is a first edition base set booster box in 2 years' time going to be $1 million US? Possibly, but what I'm getting at is who really knows? One thing I do know, one thing I have learned from sort of the car sales industry is everything sort of has this almost shelf life. And I use an example of a rare car here in Australia. We have cars like late 60s, early 70s Monaro, for argument's sake, Holden Monaro. Now that car, it's an Australian muscle car, and I'm sure America, similar to something like a Mustang that you've got over there, it's gone up, 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 up. And I suppose the people that had it as a poster on their wall as a kid that now have disposable income and can afford it, but never could when they were younger, but always wanted it, can now get it. But eventually, and this is the sad reality of it, those people aren't going to be around anymore. So where's the demand going to come from for that car? It's like a Model T Ford almost. Where's the demand for that car other than having something old and cool? That's not now indefinitely just gone up in price in a $50 million car. The only cars that indefinitely go up in price are those super, super rare, exotic, and brands that are still ticking, the first generation Ferrari, or things like, absolute game changers in the industry like the McLaren F1. So my point is, let's look at a set like EX Team Rocket. That thing has gone bonkers from the EX series. I don't even know what a booster box costs now, but good luck finding one. You're probably going to have to spend somewhere, I imagine, in the vicinity of 50,000, maybe plus Australian dollars to get yourself an EX Team Rocket Returns booster box. Now, is that box indefinitely going to just climb? Is it eventually going to get to, first edition base set booster box price? Is it going to eventually, the people that grew up with the nostalgia of collecting those cards, are they eventually just going to, completely move on from the hobby when they're 50, 60 years old and have grandchildren and have other things to worry about? That's going to, drop off if you talk about almost like this inverted U, this growth reaches its height of, this height of a relationship between lack of supply and ultimate demand, and then eventually it dips because the demand wavers for it. There's just no one left that wants to buy it anymore. I don't know. That's why today is a discussion. So there's one other thing I wanted to talk about, or a couple of things I wanted to talk about, is the fact that I hear a lot that Pokemon investing is dead. Like it's, Scarlet and Violet is the death of Pokemon investing. Now, I don't like that because, like I was saying, no one really knows. Yes, we're coming off an amazing period throughout 2020, 2021, 2022 even, where people could buy products. You set your bots up on your computer, which I didn't do, but you could set your bots up on your computer to buy your inventory, flip it online, make money. There was people rushing through stores, knocking people out of the way, literally throwing Pokemon product off the shelf into their trolley, knowing full well that it was worth more on the secondary market than it was on the new market. And look, we've seen the same in the car world too. There's cars that, because of supply, it's been so hard to get that they're worth more secondhand than what they are new. Now that's coming to an end for us. And I think it's also coming, or it has come to an end in the Pokemon card world, other than maybe Pokemon 151, just because of, and again, you go back to those 4 hits, you can't put a price on happiness. It's a set with the original 151. You're buying or you're paying for like this sort of hit of nostalgia. So, when you're talking about sets to invest in, and I'm not saying any advice here, but, looking for those things is always good. But what I'm getting at is it's pretty much done, isn't it? This whole, you can buy stuff and flip it and make money straight away. Like, it was never healthy for the hobby, and it was never a good thing, and it was never going to last long term. But to say that, Pokemon investing is now dead in Scarlet and Violet, I think, what gives someone the right to make that statement? Like, it's a pretty bold statement, and you got no way at all to back that up. I would almost argue the contrary. Like, I wasn't a huge fan, especially Scarlet and Violet base. I wasn't a huge fan of it, especially coming off those old arts from Sword and Shield, because they were so amazing. But the artwork's really growing on me now. I think it's actually in a really, really good place. I think Scarlet and Violet 151 is going to be incredible. Paldea Evolved with some of those cards is better than what people think. Obsidian Flames, we're still waiting for the full set list to come out, especially with the art rares or special illustration rares. I forget what they call them these days. But, I don't like to say modern is dying and Pokemon investing is dying. I can tell you now, Paldea Evolved, what is it, 185 Australian dollars now, because it's sort of half on clearance. I can tell you now that set in 5 years' time is not going to be $185. Now let's work off absolute worst case scenario. Let's say it's gone up 100 Australian dollars. So it's 285 Australian dollars in 5 years' time. It's still 60%, like it's still increased 60% in value in 5 years, which, as a form of investment is really hard to find somewhere else, especially with the channels now that you've got to sell things. It's easier and easier to sell these alternative investments in collectibles. So I really don't think people should be scared that, Pokemon investing is dying. I think, to summarize this whole conversation, it's actually just a really, really interesting ride to get yourself on, because no one really knows. As I was saying, it's so far in its infancy that, we've just got no clue. Like, we really don't. We can make assumptions and we can use examples and we can use data and we can suggest this might be what happens, but at the end of the day, we really don't know, and that's half the exciting part. And, they always say, diversify your investments. Well, that's sort of a good point when it comes to Pokemon, because let's say, for argument's sake, you bought every ETB from the Sun and Moon period and you bought every booster box from the Sun and Moon period. Look where it's got you now. Some of them have gone bonkers. Some of them haven't moved much. Like, I think, what a Burning Shadows ETB is probably the cheapest, or probably, Sun and Moon base is probably the cheapest, and that's the oldest. Like, barely moved. But look at a team up. Did I say booster box? I meant elite trainer box. Look at a team up elite trainer box. Look how much that's gone north. So, it's part of the fun of it. Like, and that's the whole idea behind the hobby and the community. It's all about the fun of it. So, At worst, what's wrong with buying an elite trainer box and a booster box from each set? Like, if you can afford it, it's not going to break the bank. An ETB down here in Australia, when's a set come out? Once every second week, it seems now. But what, a set comes out about once every 2 months, 3 months. There's probably 4 or 5 sets that get released each year, maybe 6 sometimes on a super busy year, but most of the time it's 4 or 5 sets a year. So 4 or 5 times a year, you buy yourself an elite trainer box and a booster box. It's going to cost you, $80 for an elite, or $90 for an elite trainer box, and $190 for a booster box at launch. Jump on, enjoy the ride. Now, with all that in mind, the last thing I wanted to say is I have faith in it. Every single card, particularly, I shouldn't say every single card, not every single card, but particularly every single sealed product that I've ever sold over the years, I just wish I'd kept and held on to. The Cell Saga First Edition booster box at $200 that I bought back in probably 2014. I don't even know what one costs now. I haven't looked it up on eBay, but it's probably, I don't reckon you'd get much change out of 2,000 or 3,000 Australian bucks, maybe even more, maybe 5,000 Australian. The point is, every single sealed product that I've ever bought, I wish I hadn't sold yet. And that leads me on to my very, very last point. And like I said, this is more a podcast. I know I felt like I've summarized everything, but you need to figure out what sort of investor you are. Not only do you need to figure out what sort of investor you are, you need to have some skin in the game and you need to love the hobby. There's no point jumping on board Pokemon investing if you don't really care that much about it. You're only jumping on because you think you're going to make a quick buck. I don't like that. I'm not a big fan of that. I think, if you're jumping on board, and I see that I've started to see this more and more often. I talked about that Reddit, that subreddit about Pokemon investing. Every second or third post now seems to be, hey everyone, I'm super new to the hobby, got $500 to spend. I want to flip it and turn it into 1,000. What should I buy? And it's like, well, come on. Like, we're not here just to try and line your pockets, so to speak. You've got to have more interest in investment. It's like me with probably the one trading card that I've only ever bought a few booster boxes, but way back in the day, and opened a few packs early on was Yu-Gi-Oh! But I don't really watched a couple of episodes on telly, but I don't really have much investment in that anime or that card game. So I don't really know what to buy. I don't know what's worth heaps. I know obviously a Blue Eyes White Dragon, like the rookie card, so to speak, is worth, and Dark Magician, but other than that, I don't really know much. I'm not going to hop onto the Yu-Gi-Oh! Subreddit and go, I want to turn $500 into 1,000 in 6 months. What should I buy? You've got to have, that's what I mean. You've got to figure out, you've got to have skin in the game. You've got to have interest in the hobby, and then you've got to figure out what sort of investor you're going to be. And that ties back into the point that the whole Pokemon card investing is so young. If you're an investor that wants to flip money every 6 months, become rich in 18 months or like a year and a half, I think you're sort of almost barking up the wrong tree. We've seen it in 2020, 2021, but I think it's returning to some sort of normality now where you're not probably going to see those sort of gains anytime soon. Maybe you will, maybe you won't. But I think you really need to be investing at least 5 years. If you've got to figure out what sort of investor you want to be. And like I was saying, if you want to do it quick, probably not going to end out too well in this climate for you. But if you've got diamond hands rather than paper and you can hold, I think things are going to turn out pretty well for you. Now, I just wanted to say thanks heaps everyone that took the time to listen and watch. If you could leave some comments down below about what your thoughts are in regards to Pokemon investing, maybe where you see it going in the future, what your experiences are with it, please drop some comments down below. Like I was saying, one of the reasons I wanted to get into this is I love that sort of community vibe. So I'd love to chat to some people. There's always some great people that comment on my videos. So thanks heaps. And we'll catch you next time. Ta.